this is how well when you're a boxing world champion, you've got your own technological producer there, and a good mate of mine in Fitzy. So.
well, if I didn't, I wouldn't be with you. That's for sure.
No,
I have been punched in the head a few times, guys, so I have an excuse.
But no, look, it's I tell you what, like even when I actually, Jeff, I always try to do research when I do these sorts of interviews. And when I was even thinking back last night, and I know whether I'm showing my age, and I know we're all getting a little bit older, mate, but when I'm fortunate enough to do research and then I stop to think about how lucky I am to actually, you know what I mean, to have a chat to you about your career, because growing up and just seeing, and firstly off the rank, to have basically one of, if not Australia's greatest fighters. He had 33 fights, 29 wins. He's in the Australian Sports Hall of Fame and he's in the Boxing Hall of Fame. It doesn't really get any better than that. So on behalf of everyone, Jeff, this morning, a big welcome and a big thank you for, helping us out with the cause of what we're trying to achieve with Walk With Me.
It's a pleasure, mate. And you're trying to achieve something pretty special. I'm happy to be a part of it.
No, you're a star. And did you ever think when you were growing up that, one day you'd end up in the Boxing Hall of Fame? Like you start off with all the loftiest of ambitions, but to then end up in the Boxing Hall of Fame alongside some of the greatest names that have ever put on the gloves must be a pretty special feeling.
Like I said, growing up, I never thought I'd box in my life. I never put a glove on until I was like 17 and a half. So all I ever wanted to do was be a rugby league football player. And then I found this opportunity to go to a youth club, do some boxing, put some gloves on, and really the rest is history. When I was 19 and a half, I went to the Olympics. When I was 20, I was world champion. So things happen quick. So, I was blessed enough to get into the World Boxing Hall of Fame my first year as eligible inductee, which doesn't happen unless you've done some great things in your sport. So, look, I'm really happy, and I'm more happy to call myself an Aussie doing it,
Yeah, I know. And where all that journey started, was it a case of, I know you mentioned rugby league and also boxing. Was that a case of, was that you and Johnny Lewis actually sitting down and saying, well, hang on, we've got to go one way or the other here?
Well, I just met Johnny by accident. I went to a youth club, not to box. I just went there I really went there looking for some guys we were trying to have a fight with. And they weren't there. In the last room I looked in was a boxing room, and I sat down, watched a friend of mine from school box, and I don't know, I heard them say they wanted somebody to box. So me being that cheeky little cocky thing, I put my hand up and I jumped in the ring that day, had a bit of a spar, which didn't go too well for me, let me tell you that. But Johnny Lewis said that he's seen potential there. And again, I wasn't sure whether I believed him or not, because I thought, wow, I've just been beaten up by this guy. And look, I went back, I trusted in what he said to me. And like I said, really the rest is history.
And that relationship you had with Johnny Lewis, it went beyond, I think, even like a normal sort of boxing coach. That great relationship that you had such respect for one another, but it was also, I think it just went another level, that you wanted to be successful to do that for him as well, wasn't it?
Oh, without doubt, more for him than myself, more for the people who would support us and help me get to where I was. Because back then, really, I had nothing. My dad had been sick all his life. My dad had never had a job in his life because he was so sick. And my mum worked 3 jobs, and I had this opportunity to provide and to make people proud. Going to my house every day wasn't like the greatest thing. We had 6 kids living in 3 bedrooms, and it was difficult. But like I said, I got this opportunity, and I felt some amazing love from Johnny, and he gave me more than that. And I just wanted to work hard and keep making those guys happy, because I knew every time that I won, I put a smile on a lot of people's faces.
What do you think was the biggest thing why do you think you were able to connect with someone like Johnny Lewis so well? Like, what was the thing that he brought the best out of? You basically brought the best out of one another. Like,
we talk about goal setting and things like that. Sometimes people say something to you and you think, can I achieve that? Well, everything that he said to me, I don't know, I seem to achieve slowly. So it just made me believe in him more and more. And I'll never forget, 1983, Johnny had another fighter and had to go overseas. I think I went to Hawaii or somewhere for a fight. And I was going to the World Cup in Rome. And he left me a letter. And the letter, I've still got the letter. The letter said to me that just go there, enjoy yourself. I don't expect you to, to win, but I know you'll do your best. And he said, through these occasions, and especially this event in 1985, you'll reap all the benefits. It was just crazy that in 1985 I became world champion. So I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know. He just had this amazing connection with me, and whatever. Like if he told me I had to jump off the harbour bridge to win a fight, I would have jumped off.
Now, I've actually got goosebumps you saying that, because when I went to the gym real early this morning, I actually happened to watch a video of you actually reading out that letter and how eerily that letter then came true in 1985.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But when I talk about it, mate, Corey, I try to think of the relationship with Mike Tyson and Cus D'Amato. And
yep.
Mike and I, when we sit down and we talk, it's so similar that he had this guy who, he was on the wrong side, going nowhere, and he had this guy that he just believed in, and it was exactly the same as Johnny. Johnny was might have been the greatest or the smartest boxing coach, but as a people person, he was second to none. He, like I said, when he told me to work, I worked. I tried it, and like I said, for everything I done when I was doing that work, I wanted him to think, wow, this guy can do that much. I was always trying to make him proud, always. Or prouder every time.
Did you sort of touched on it, did you, way back then, was it something that you had in your head that you were going to end up world champion? Because I think it's just great for people to hear the story. And we always talk about when we go for these types of walks about, and having a vision and a purpose and everything like that. You obviously achieved so much. Was it a case that you'd set those visions yourself, or how did you, was it something that you sat down and did as a process, or how did you do it?
Well, let me tell you a process that Paul and I, my manager here, Paul, from Barking Dog, we sat down recently because these people are doing my life story and stuff, and I went through a few statistics, and in my first 23 fights, I think I had like 10 or 12 or 13 world title fights, 15 rounds. Floyd Mayweather talks about how in 10 years he won 4 world titles. In my 6th year as a professional, when I fought as Zuma Nelson, I really won 4 world titles. That was in 6 years. That was a guy from Australia. So I've been able to achieve these amazing goals. I don't know, obviously hard work. And I tell everybody one thing, preparation's everything, Corey. I always think about when I had my first world title fight and I was fighting 15 rounds, and everybody was saying, how's he going to fight 15 rounds? He's never done it before. But in training, Johnny made me do it numerous times. So I knew in my head that I could do it.
And like you mentioned, the importance of like preparation. Like, just give everyone a little bit of an insight what it's the lengths you'd have to go to prepare for a world title fight, and the sacrifices you made personally.
Yeah, well, look, the hardest things were obviously the training for me. I loved it. Making weight was hard. There were times where, like for instance, before I fought Steve McCrory for the Olympic revenge for the Olympic gold medalist, we weighed in at 12 o'clock in the day those days, and I'd ran 15K that morning, had to take laxatives and hadn't eaten anything for 2 or 3 days, hadn't drank any fluid for 2 or 3 days, and I had to get on the scales. And that night I had to fight 15 rounds, so certainly pretty tough.
Yeah, and you touched on a little bit the Olympics, like how it's amazing that would happen at the Olympics, and then unbelievably it ended up happening maybe many years later against the Zuma Nelson. But how disappointing, when I did the research on it, that all the judges had you winning at the Olympics, but it was then overturned. Was that correct?
Yeah, it was the first time in Olympic history that there was a jury. So it was one of those boys clubs thing where they took a few extra people over there with them. The jury was there. The jury said that I had lost the fight, so they overturned the decision. They reversed it, and from having a guaranteed bronze and having the opportunity to maybe fight and be Australia's first ever gold medalist, I end up with nothing.
And
but I did end up with a lot of. I had a lot of anger. Then I just look. At the Olympics, the greatest thing at the Olympics, Corey, is you go there, you march in the opening ceremony, and after when it's all done, you go out and you have the most amazing party ever. Well, I couldn't march because I had to make weight that first day I was fighting, so I missed the march. What I thought about was winning a gold medal, and after it, as soon as I lost my fight, as soon as they robbed me of my medal, I just jumped on the plane and went home, so I didn't have the party as well. And I think that mentality that I'm talking about means that I never went there for a party. I went there to win a medal for Australia, and that's how I've always been. I mean, I just been watching the Michael Jordan, show on him, and I don't know. I have the same mentality. All I wanted to do was win, and if I didn't win, I wasn't happy. Second wasn't good enough.
Do you think in some ways, like as disappointing as that is, and we know how much you do love Australia, but do you think it also then really gave you a massive kick in the arse and moved you forward that, from there on in, you made your mind up, you were going to, really not prove anything wrong from the Olympics, but it really spurred you on to greater heights?
Oh, definitely so. Like I said, when that happened to me, I thought to myself, here you go, I've had 20, well, that was my 28th amateur fight. These guys are fighting at hundreds, and been fighting since since I was 6 and 8 and 10 years old. And I thought to myself, wow, for me to just do that against, a guy who ended up losing the gold medal by a split decision, I was capable of doing anything and beating anybody. It gave me enormous amounts of confidence.
And then, I suppose, how much, did the fight, going back to the first fight against the Zuma Nelson in Vegas, and obviously what then happened, do you think, how much do you think it took out of you, from a mental point of view, knowing that everyone in the world knew that, in essence, you won that fight? Even Mike Tyson and all different people had basically said that you won that fight. But how much did that actually mentally take out of you, knowing that you basically won the fight?
Yeah, you know what, Corey? The WBC president was in the ring that night and said that I won the fight. And the crazy thing is that it wasn't reversed. It's an easy thing to do. Just go to the scorecards, watch a fight again, and say I'd be 4-time world champion. But I don't need that. But I tell you what, after the fight, Corey, I don't know.
Yep.
I came home. I don't know if I was ever the same. Something left me that evening, and I still wanted to win. Still thought I had the fire. But yeah, I was. It deflated me because I'd worked so hard to get myself into that position. My first fight in America, it was pretty heartbreaking. But like I said, I don't have any excuses. I think boxing's a sport where when you have a use-by date, it's up, and like I said, slowly, I just lost that hunger, and the fire in the belly was gone. He was a kid that, like I said, had nothing, and now I'm making millions of dollars for a fight. Yeah, I lost my hunger, and I lost that will,
One thing I'd actually forgotten about, and again, even doing a little bit of research, knowing that we're going to chat, was you had a real special relationship with Con, and how, people just, I think, always love the way you went about it. But when they saw, you had this great relationship with your mate Con, how great was it to have and look after him over the journey?
Oh, wow. Well, people don't realise, still today, I speak to him maybe 100 times a day. I ring him every day, and we have laughs and jokes. And because he remembers, look, he don't know the time, he don't know light and day, but he knows every fight that I've had. He knows every experience that we've had. And people don't realise that it wasn't just Con there for a holiday. I had to clean him, Corey. I had to shower him. I had to change him. Yeah, he can't do those things. And sometimes it was a bit of a hindrance, but I loved it. I just loved having him with me. He made me so happy. Whenever I felt a little down or out or anything was going tough, I just go to Con, and he always made me laugh. So I love him. And like I said, to this day, straight away when I get off this to you, I'll be talking to Con.
And again, like even Joe Bugner said, like, and that probably flows on from, I mean, your ability to how you used to be able to look after Con. And I remember like seeing Vision of You where you, with kids and things like that. Joe Bugner said you had a really great ability to switch on and off in between, I mean, what you needed to do and outside the ring. Was that a fair call?
Yeah, I think in life, when you're in a sport so tough, you've got to be able to, you've got to be able to change the channel. If you just stay totally, focused, or if you're on one thing, you use up nervous energy and you can't relax. I used to try to, relax as much as I could until the time I needed to switch on for fight, and then I would switch on.
And I suppose the other part too is once you become world champion, how hard is it to maintain that? Now, I know it's a little bit sort of, whether it's cliched or not, like how hard is it to maintain that real edge and that sort of eye of the tiger type stuff that all of a sudden you win, you maybe end up with a little bit more money, but how did you try and address that side of it where all of a sudden your life changes and you maybe have a few more hangers on and
a lot more.
How did you, what would, and again, I know that you're looking after Brock now and you're mentoring fighters now, but how did you deal with it that all of a sudden you went from a boy from Marrickville to all of a sudden you're a world champion and you're on the world stage? Like, how did you manage to distance yourself, or how did you really deal with that?
Yeah, well, that's what we didn't have a program for that those days, Corey. Everybody just thought, it was great. You got all this money and you were rich, you were famous, and that was it. You could do what we wanted to do back then. Hey, if there was cameras around back then, God knows where me and all the other athletes from the early '80s and '90s would be today. But like I said, we never had a program for that. Nobody ever taught you. You're going to have all this money. You got to learn how to use it. You got to learn how to stay humble. We took it for granted. And if there's anything that I'd like to change in athletes today, is I'd like to teach them. When you got to have money, learn to invest it, learn to be a better person from it, learn to not just to take all the, like I said, there were so many things that I got for nothing as a world champion. I think to myself, here's a guy who can pay for everything. Here we are out here walking for Charities Day and trying to, get awareness to help people, where I could walk in the restaurant because I'm just giving for nothing. Give that money to a charity, help somebody who needs it. Like I said, back then I didn't need it, but I still took advantage of it, and I don't really like the person I was back then.
What was the hardest thing for you? Like when you eventually, when do you actually really know is the right time to retire? Like when did you first start to think, hang on, I'm nearing the end?
Yeah, I knew on a couple of occasions. I knew after my second fight with Nelson that it wasn't the same. I knew after Calvin Grove that it definitely wasn't the same. But you keep searching, you keep trying to think, I'm going to find that person again. But in the sport of boxing, it's individual. And when the tools are done in boxing, you can't repair them. You don't have a teammate to help you or anything like that. So I knew there were signs early, but I tried to ignore them and try to think that my superhuman strength, or me thinking that I was Superman, would resurface again, but it never did, mate. When it's done in boxing, it's kind of done, mate.
And then on from that, so what's the hardest part when you are retired, the gap in your life? What did you find the hardest part once you'd actually retired of what were the hardest things to then move on to a new career after boxing?
Well, the hardest thing was what you just said about these hanger-runners and stuff. You start to learn who your real friends were and who the guys that you really thought meant something to you. You find out if they really did. And I found it the hardest way ever. I won't bring any names up now, but like I said, I just want to, the toughest transition for me was sitting at home, knowing that I'd put roofs and helped people and brought people cars and spent millions of dollars on people who just never spoke to me for periods of time that we don't speak today, which is quite upsetting, but I just think it's a part of life. And like I said, I think that we need to sit down all these, and not just our great athletes, we need to sit down our youth and let them know that in life, times change and things get rough, and we've got to be prepared for them, you know. There were days I used to sit in my room and weep on my own about things, you know. But you know, I used to always think that I was strong and I'd go out and face it on my own. But I think I've learned throughout the time that having my wife and my partner Susie was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because when I needed her, she's always been there. So it's good to be able to talk to people and have somebody that you can speak to, and you know, voice your opinion, make you feel better, and you know, your opinion might or you might not always be right, but it's great to talk about and let somebody else you know, try to help you through it.
Yeah, very good. Now, even I thought it was an amazing story that you got Brock Jarvis, and there was actually an amazing connection there, because was it his uncle that was the one that actually got you into fighting at the police at the boys' club?
Well, he didn't actually get me into fighting, but he was a policeman who helped me and steered me and gave me a couple of opportunities. And then he was a first grade rugby league player, and he took me to train with him. And yeah, he helped me so much. He's the Jarvis family, prior to me teaming up with Brock, were a part of my life. The uncle, the policeman, Pat Jarvis, his mother was my nutritionist, and she helped me. And brother Dominic was my great friend, and we are today. And yeah, so we had a huge association. And then all of a sudden, Brock's 16. I get a knock on the door one day, and I'm doing nothing with boxing because I'd kind of just taken the back door out of the sport. And his father, Dominic, says, "Look, my young son's doing some boxing. Can you have a look at him?" I had a look at him, and that's it. I went overseas for a couple of weeks, came back, and then I threw him on a plane, took him overseas, and we started training and haven't looked back. It's been an amazing relationship.
What have you found the hardest thing about actually now where you're training? Like what's the hardest part that you found in terms of
you know,
being...
It's a great question, Roy, because what you got to learn in this day and age, everybody's different. Not everybody's a Jeff Fenech. You know, you got to treat everybody as individuals, and you can't expect people to do, you know, what I done. So yeah, the hardest thing is, you got to learn the person. You got to make sure that you sit there. It's similar to Wayne Bennett's story. Wayne Bennett doesn't just coach you. He wants to sit you down. He wants to find out about your family, how everything's going, and then you got a bit of an insight. And you know what you're dealing with. There's some people you can yell and scream at, and that motivates them. Some people you yell and scream at, and they go behind the wall and cry, you know. So yeah, you know, just different.
Do you find yourself at any point that at different times when you're maybe talking to Brock or any of your other charges that you're sounding eerily like your mentor in Johnny Lewis, where you actually double check yourself and go, hang on, shit, geez, I sound a lot like Johnny here?
Oh no, definitely. Look, I definitely know that a lot of the things that I use, I don't know if they're exactly the same, but I learned them from Johnny. Johnny was a great motivator. Johnny was a great man. Johnny was somebody who I said, like, you know, I don't want to use this term, but Johnny could have 100 kids around him, and if a guy came with a machine gun, 100 kids are going to just jump in front of him, you know, because they wanted to save him. He was that kind of person that you would fall in love with. And you know, I've got an amazing relationship with Brock, and my relationship with Brock it's hard to take with the concussion system and all these things that are happening. I try to look after my fighters as much as I can, because I know back in the day, all this stuff wasn't as public, and you know, we used to get knocked out in sparring, get it back up and spar again. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm thinking about not just Brock, but I'm thinking about Brock's life after boxing, which is more important than his life in boxing.
Yeah. And then, look, one more question from me, and then I'll throw it open to the guys. And so if anyone out there, if you want to prepare some of your questions, I know you're probably going to have a few anyway, and hopefully I haven't stolen your thunder. But one last one from me. Now, Jeff, it was quite interesting when I, again, looked at the research of at the time when you came into boxing. It was quite interesting. It's a good parallel in terms of what's happening now, where they were actually mentioning, where's boxing at? And it was quite interesting when you come onto the scene, how you sort of really reignited boxing in Australia. And it nearly feels like a little bit the same at the moment, but in a different way because of with UFC coming in. So where do you see where boxing is sitting at the moment, knowing we've got this sort of a little bit of a juggernaut out there called the UFC?
Yeah, well, I think boxing's strong. I think like we had the Maloney's overseas just recently, two boys from Melbourne, and who did amazing jobs flying our flag. Then we get this terrible decision, and one of them gets robbed of being the world champion. And people, it's a notch in the back for boxing. It's just something that we don't need. But look, we got some great fighter George Kambosos, we've got Liam Paro, we've got Liam Wilson, we've got some young kids that are, I'm sure that they're going to turn into future world champions. It's just about getting them there the right way, looking after them, and I think boxing will be super, super strong very, very soon. We've got great promoters, we've got Matt Rose, we've got Dean Lonigan, who are putting some great shows on. So yeah, boxing's great at the moment.